Tamar Yoseloff, and I'd like to welcome you to this issue of the Alchemy Spoon. When the editors decided on the theme of space for this, issue 7, they had in mind the cosmic cliffs of the Carina Nebula, recently revealed by NASA's James Webb Telescope. But the poets included here have expanded into even greater reaches. Ken Coburn's poem, Attention, which opens this issue, contemplates the blank canvas of the artist James Cowie, while Martin Yeats is focused on the permanent pause in his poem Caesura, which, as the title suggests, asks the reader to consider physical gaps on the page. Jerry, on Otzanski, meanwhile, is concerned with negative space, the shadow charged with the energy of the couple who are enveloped in it, in her poem Breakfast at Mattapoisett. Judith Wozniak's Safe Space gives us the cold rooms of the public clinic, colored only by the green sign with a boy running for the exit. A more sinister kind of space is the one left when flesh falls away from the body of the hanged man in Martin Reeser's poem, based on a woodcut by Leonard Baskin. Tim Relf finds joy in the little things while obeying the 2-meter rule in his poem Lunch Then, and Catherine Redford's Fossils Lodge on the Coast locates imprints of absence in the rock. Pat Winslow is the featured poet for this issue. Her poem, How Shall We Bury Our Dead, follows that terrible question of the title with more and more questions, all unanswerable in a place and time of conflict. The Season of Burning Heather is Winslow's view over the loch where a lark is threading a silver monologue. Also in this issue is Mary Mulholland's insightful interview with poet Caroline Bird, who talks about the space that poetry opens to say what is urgent and sometimes painful. Leslie Sharp looks at notions of space in The Glass Essay by Anne Carson, and their reviews of new books by Jane Byrne, Joe Clement, Richard Skinner, Anita Patai, and Denise Saul, amongst others. But perhaps the closing lines of Kate Oldfield's poem Credo can stand as a manifesto for the white spaces we routinely encounter as poets. And I quote her final lines: "I believe in the white silence rising beyond the last inked point where everything waits and wants to be understood." I hope you enjoy this issue as much as I have. Thanks to the editors Roger Bloor, Vanessa Lampert, and Mary Mulholland for creating this vital and important magazine and for their editorial vision. Enjoy.
James McDermott's poetry collection, Monatomy, was longlisted for Polari's first book prize. James also has a pamphlet and another of queer nature poems forthcoming with Broken Sleep Books. Here's James.
Shawnee Bubble. I see you in Nivea pink lava as I wash your granddaughter's little limbs, like you washed mine when I was muddy knees. I see you in sea foam on Weybourne Beach, walks we never did together. I see you rise in lager pints we never shared. I see you erupt in boiling water as I make 2 a.m. tea in your best dad mug. I see you trapped in a spirit level, still reminding me I'm not straight. I never asked you why Shawnee Bubble was your lifelong nickname. Maybe Bubble was your first word, your first teddy. Maybe everybody knew you'd float briefly, burst.
Miles Gibson runs a small farm in Oxfordshire, growing the fruit he makes into liqueurs. He also works part-time as a psychotherapist. His work has been published in South Bank magazine. Here's Miles.
Come back. Setting your secretive face far, far away, you leave the car for another school day. See you soon, tailing off, as soon is not tonight or even tomorrow. Pack-ladened, you break into a bumpy run. Like some human airbag, I lurch to inflate around you. This term, your topic is space. I remember writing, I struggled to fasten your dress when once I struggled to loosen your mother's. And each night I check on you and think, impossible, as the size of our galaxy, that I could choose to be apart from you. Today I will customize a pencil case, a ruler that strengthens the spine, a Tipex apologist to whitewash. Then, out with the felt-tip lightsabers, and we'll slice into the future. Rey, an old Skywalker on a comeback, bright waves, blue, green, and gold.
Kate Oldfield has worked in non-fiction publishing for 25 years. During lockdown, she wrote a poem a week and rekindled a passion for poetry. She lives in Oxford with her audience of 2 teenagers and 2 cats. Here's Kate.
Credo. I believe in that line that lingers beneath the title, before the first word, a space where meaning and potential mingle. I trust in the metaphor that lives on long after the poet makes shape out of stillness. I have faith in the new image that catches the heart to resolve something unsaid. To lean into the poetry is to know there is no cure for this love. Let words be my witness. I believe in the white silence rising beyond the last inked point where everything waits and wants to be understood.
Fakina MacDonald has published 2 pamphlets and a full poetry collection. She received a Northern Writers Award from New Writing North for Remembering Disease, which will be published later this year. Here's Fakina.
Sitting in his stateroom late September, he stares ahead at the yellow wall. He hopes this portrait will elevate him to an elder statesman. The hand that signed declarations of war lies sleeping in his lap. She sees a balding man, thin smile, trapped like an upturned beetle.
Jane Lovell's work focuses upon our relationship with our planet and its wildlife. She has won the Ginkgo Prize and the Rialto RSPB Nature and Place competition. The God of Lost Ways and This Tilting Earth are her latest eco-poetry collections. Here's Jane.
Leica, you must understand. From the first moment your milky eye slid a blind crescent into the warm horizon of your mother, it would always end this way. We chose you, the bones and shiver of you on the Moscow streets, the oil-blue orbs of your eyes, planets we might one day visit. The tilt of your listening, that way you had of wagging your whole being, and those perfect claws, almost translucent, paired from the earth's shadow. We pinned you to the stars, so many miles away, we could only imagine your panic at the seismic roar rushing past your window. We measured it, of course, tracked your frantic heart inside its shuddering cage, mapped your fear from peak to peak as furious needles scribbled mountains, fizzing constellations. No one mentioned that the heat was rising. And as you died, still trusting our return, desperate for the door to open, 2,000 miles away, we watched your last slow exhalation. Gentle Kudryavka, Zuchka, we shall always remember your pale light, trembling like shook foil in that dreadful sky.
It's now my very real pleasure to introduce Martin Rieser. Martin is a poet-artist whose poems have been published in Poetry Review, Right to be Counted, The Unpredicted Spring, Magma 74, Morfrog 22, Poetry Kit, Primus Volume 3, Art List Anthology, and he's been shortlisted for Frosted Fire, Charles Causley, and runner-up in the Norman Nicholson Prize 2020. Winner of last year's Hastings Poetry Competition, Martin runs the Bristol Stanza Group. Looking forward to your poem, Martin.
The Hanged Man, Leonard Baskin Woodcut, 1955. When flesh falls away, the sinews and the bones preside, turning slowly on a rope, pendant from the nearest star. The hanged man lets the wind blow through to clean away his human form, and leaves behind this cage of air, delicate as a leaf, dried in patterns of old sap and long-trapped sun.
Doreen Herbst is a former scientist in Wales who now lives in Germany. Her writing considers the natural world, but also themes that address social issues. Her poetry has been published in Farmeden Journal, The Dirigible Balloon, Syrasus Magazine, Fenton Poetry Journal, among others. She's a reviewer at the Conciliant Science Poetry Journal. Let's hear Doreen.
Stars. 10,000 stars puncture the black sky above your house on a clear night. Many more spin and twirl, gleam and flicker their spikes in the space we call our universe. Some folks say there are 200 billion galaxies. Others say the number is 3 trillion, with as many stars in each one. How much is a billion, a trillion? 1,000,000 seconds makes 12 days. 1 billion seconds, 32 years. 1 trillion seconds will be just under 32,000 years. 200 billion galaxies times 400 billion stars makes for a lot of brilliance.
Janet Lancaster is Welsh by birth and was brought up in South Wales. She's a retired teacher of modern languages who lives in Rutland. She has an MA in creative writing from Manchester Metropolitan University. Her poems have been published in anthologies and on the Poetry Society website, stanza competition pages as well. Her interests include contemporary books, family history, travel, walking and archery. Let's hear Janet's poem.
60 years a shed. Stacked high with spare parts that might have come in handy, innards of gramophones, defunct TVs, from table to rafters, behind its swollen door, we cleared the shed that Dad built. Walls of rose-red Abersuchan brick, a cottage window, corrugated roof, plumbed-in brass tap, Bakelite switch he'd wired to a naked bayonet bulb, which lit the shed that Dad built. The mangle Mum turned each washing day, the boiler where her puds were cooked, the iron last where Grandad tapped in tacks and segs to his single shoe, had witnessed work in the shed Dad built. Spiderwebs swung between the beams, lawnmower blades would drop their load, and Joey Tortoise wintered in a box wrapped in straw, but never woke up when spring warmed the shed that Dad built. Was its roof asbestos? Did the concrete floor crack? best not return, so I'll never know if new owners chose to make their mark and filled a skip with rose-red rubble knocked from the shed that Dad built.
Tim Reef's poems have appeared in Acumen, The Rialto, The Frogmore Papers, Poetry Salzburg, Wild Court, Hard Won Clapping, Ink, Sweat and Tears and The Friday Poem. He is an alumnus of the Faber Advanced Poetry Academy 2021-22, and his most recent novel, What She Left, was published by Penguin. Looking forward to your poem, Tim.
Lunch, then. 2 metres apart, the two of us sat, sanitised, under her maple tree. Finding joy in the little things, that's the secret, she said, as she had so many times. My mum, 85 years old, seed catalogue by her side, plate perched on lap, coatless in the southern sunshine, and watching her squeeze out the last of the Tommy K, then spoon on the mustard, a first, then a second, huge dob. I understood. Finally, I understood. The little things, I tell myself, 2 years on, trying to remember what it felt like to eat hot dogs outdoors in November.
Tamsin Cottis is a child psychotherapist and writer of short fiction and poetry. Tamsin's work has been placed or short or long listed for several short story prizes, including Dyslexia, Fish, Bath and London. Among the places she's been published as the Mechanics Institute Review, Flashback Fiction, Rattle Tales, People Press, Atrium and Verve. Let's hear Tamsin's poem. Jerry on its...
Hello, my name's Tamsin Cottis and this is my poem on the theme of space. At no point does she look back. At the beach, my granddaughter, not yet 3, runs full tilt, naked, to the wide, low-tide water. We adults park on sand, lean back on hands under sun, expand, watch her go. Narrow-eyed, I gauge her speed, judge the moment to begin my steady run to shoreline. I reach her at wave break, her gleeful feet swirling in foam, my right hand there, ready.
We're now going to hear from Jerry Otzanski. Jerry is a Jungian analyst whose poems have been published widely. She won the 2012 Ledbury and the 2019 Ver Awards, and her pamphlet called them Juneberries, published with Templar Poetry, won the Otter Shot Award. Her debut collection, Kayakoi, is forthcoming in January 23 with Blue Diode Press. Looking forward to hearing your poem, Jerry.
Breakfast in Mattapoisett. The day is lemon yellow. Chopin fills your rooms. Hokusai's wave breaks inside its blue frame. As you pour coffee, a vine of steam climbs between us, vanishing, leaving me your face, flushed with our sleep, the hungry spaces inside us brimming. You draw me a map outlining the way home, your pencil precise, a labyrinth of squares at your command. Under the table, our laps share a shadow.
Our next poet is Dennis Williams. Dennis is an emerging poet and writer from Sandy Hill, St. Catherine, Jamaica. His inaugural piece, entitled They Burn the City, has been published in the Agape Review. Dennis Williams.
This is my package. The interview went fine, yet I didn't get the job. They said I did well, as I know I could. But I was denied even getting a try, even a slight chance to even glimpse the boss. They said they understand, but my address is my baggage. I went to school and paid attention. The teacher said that I work well, listen well, attentive, dress well, well-mannered, spoke well. But my address, oh, my address is my baggage. I was born there. My parents live there. My brothers too. My best friends. But interview panel listen to the news. I know the question they ask, the happenings on my street, the expression on their face. My street was a concern. Now I'm paying. My address is my baggage. On this little island, on this little rock, where can I go? Where no one knows my street. The police tape. How can I erase it? The news, the blood. It was all in the news. My baggage is my address. How long should this journey last?
Now I'd like to welcome Mary Robinson. Mary Robinson's first collection, The Art of Gardening, published by Flambard in 2010, was published in her 60th year. Her recent work includes a pamphlet, Alphabet Poems, Mariscat 2019, and the second collection, Trace, published by Oversteps in 2020. Her poetry has been published in several magazines, and she lives in North Wales. Mary.
The Glove Marriage, Fran Thomas. She marries by proxy, whispers her vows to an empty glove sent by a man on the other side of the globe. The glove smells of tobacco and dogs. It bears his hand's imprint, the creases where his fingers grasp the horse's reins. She slips her fingers into its looseness. Her ring catches a thread. She thinks of his large, strong hand entering the right glove's waiting sheath, the glove he has and holds from this day forward. She sips her spiced red wine.
Now we have Karen McFarlane. Karen lives in Perthshire. She's an occupational therapist and a midlife arts and humanities student. Her poems appeared in Poetry Scotland, Gallus and Spelt magazine. She won third place in the Scottish Mountain Writing Competition in 2020. Karen McFarlane.
Between the bones. By the bed on your last day, I find parts of you already gone. Spaces scooped between the bones of your face and hands, the unslaked skin of each soft dip poised to slip should you stir. Like the hollow well you taught me to make in a bowl of sifted flour.
Now we have Alexandra Williams. Alexandra is a copywriter from London who lives in Newbury in Berkshire. She turned her hand to poetry 2 years ago and has recently published in Door is Ajar, Brave Voices and the Minison Project's TMP magazine. Alexandra.
Portrait of my grandfather as a crop duster plane. My grandfather's name was Orlik. In Polish, this means eagle, as in white eagle, as in soaring national symbol. Except the only thing he ever had named after him was a crop duster plane, a present from his comrades in the Socialist Party for services to the state as director of Warsaw Domestic Airport. I remember seeing it in the newspaper, a squat, undignified thing, less like my grandfather, and more like the mushrooms he made a point of picking. Mostly silent, he rose from the porch and without warning took flight to the forest, returning with just the one fat sep, or penny bun, porcino, pravcivek, loosely translated as righteous one, which he brought back and handed with ceremony to my grandmother, who clapped one brawny arm over his shoulder, Misho, before turning to us. He's not done that in years. And that's how I'll remember him. His back disappearing, nose dipping as he hovered, then dove low to the forest floor.
Now we have Pat Winslow. Pat worked as an actor before leaving theatre in 1987. She's published 7 poetry collections, including Kissing Bones and Unpredictable Geometry with Templar Poetry. Pat recently discovered time equals space in the Outer Hebrides when she was working on a novel and looking forward to having more. She is also our spotlighted reader for this issue, and you'll be able to hear Pat discussing and reading 2 of her poems if you follow the link in the magazine under the reading page. Pat Winslow.
How shall we bury our dead? The people keep coming and people keep dying. On the edge of the camp, the cemetery's full. We lay our loved ones on top of each other. How else can we bury them when there's no room? How shall we tend them? Who will cleanse them? Who will spread balm when there's none to be had? Who will clothe them and beat drums of mourning when all that we have has been left behind? Who will visit the man who died longing for the touch of a loved one, the land of his birth? Who knows he is here? How will they find him? He arrived with no passport. Without papers, he's no one. We go after dark, when the city is sleeping. We must bury our dead wherever we can. And now there's a rumour, a woman in black who comes past our fence, a woman whose baby was buried at dawn, will reopen the grave, so one of our mothers can bury her son. In silence and stealth, the kindness of strangers, the gift of a home for a child who had none.
Our last poet this evening is Laura Thies. Laura's work appears in Poetry, MS Lexia, Rattle and other magazines. She's a Forward Prize nominee and an AMH ETH Prize recipient. She won the Oxford Brooks Poetry Prize, the Mogford Prize, the Hammond House Literary Award, and was a finalist for the National Poetry Competition. Her debut, How to Extricate Yourself, won the Brian Dempsey Memorial Prize. Laura.
The best years are the ones you create space. You ask me what of the past year I want to burn, and my first thought is the songlessness. I want to be part of a chanting crowd again. I want unheard of melody and harmonies, to find all the buried music inside of me and pass it around to strangers.
Well, that brings us to the end of the launch. I'd like to thank Tamar Yoseloff for her excellent introduction, all the poets who submitted and contributed to this issue, and to thank you for joining us this evening. Our next issue window starts in the 1st of October, and the theme for that is gift. You can buy copies of the current issue from the Clayhanger Press website, the details of which are on the screen at the moment. And you can submit to our next issue once the window's open at the Alchemy Spoon website. Again, the details are on the screen. So once again, Thank you very much. Good night. And look forward to seeing you at our next launch.